Hi everyone, it's Nate Piekos of Blambot, and welcome to another Lettering Live. This is I Hate Fairyland Volume 2, Number 7, Page 2. I picked this page because it's got 3 big blocks of sound effects lettering in it. There are some alternate versions of the character Gert who are noisily feasting. I also picked this page because there are some clipping masks, and a clipping mask is a way for a letterer to create the illusion that either their balloons or sound effects or text or whatever is actually behind some elements that have been drawn in the artwork. You'll see me make a clipping mask so that the sound effects go behind someone's head and go behind lots of little globs of flying food. The fonts used in I Hate Fairyland are, of course, Imaginary Friend for dialogue. Anytime that Gert swears, I use the font Toonacious. And on this particular page, the sound effect fonts are Full Bleed, Brushzerker Extended, and Blowhole. And the balloons in I Hate Fairyland all use a custom Adobe Illustrator brush that I designed called Crayo. And all of these things can be found on Blambot.com, of course. So that's enough out of me. Enjoy the show. First up, I'm going to drop artwork into the art layer of my template, lock it down, and then copy and paste my area type objects into each panel. There's 2 area type objects, one with a flat top for balloons that will be butted against the panel border, like right here, and the other one's just an oval. I like to do dialogue first and save sound effects for the end because sound effects are the most fun. And it also serves the purpose that dialogue takes precedence as far as space. So if I get all the dialogue done, I will know exactly how much space I have left for sound effects. So every time Gert swears, there's a special font I have to use called Toonacious. And sometimes that means breaking up dialogue balloons into chunks so I can fit that bigger font in between. See, I killed your, now there's a space, and then sister, and now you want us. I'm intentionally leaving that space because I gotta fit that right there. I gotta fit Puffin Fluffin in there. Puffy Fluffin? I don't know, it changes all the time. It's some variation on fluff. So here I'm going to start getting into these 3 big blocks of sound effects, these chewing, gnashing, drinking sounds. And I'm trying to pick fonts that are sort of organic and maybe gooey or wet looking, you know, kind of gross, because these people are kind of gross when they eat. And I'm just juggling around letters, making things offset and more fun. And these rough placements here are just sort of an idea. I'm gonna further play with all these as I get them situated. Initially here, I'm just trying to make fun, bouncy patterns with the letters. As I start cobbling them together here and combining things, I'll take a more designerly approach to how things are, the relationships between the letters here. And things, adding slant kind of gives a little bit more of a dynamic look to things. And at this point, I'm just having fun. I'm looking at the relationship between the sound effect text above and below, and making sure the negative spaces between them aren't too big or too small. So So I think at this point I'm pretty well happy with that filling up, the way that fills up that corner. I just added an offset path, and then I duplicated it and dragged it slightly. And I'm lucky in working with I Hate Fairyland that I always have the colored art. Most of the time letterers end up lettering over inks only, so we kind of have to guess what color the sound effects are going to be. But here I can look directly at the colored page and see what complements those colors. I also want something that will pop against the background color and also be distinctly different from the color of those little globs of flying food. So I'm about to start creating these clipping masks. And you just use the pen tool and you zoom way in. And you start tracing the objects that you want your lettering to have the illusion of appearing behind. Pretty time consuming. I'm sure if you've seen any of these videos previously, I've mentioned that making clipping masks can take up your whole day. Throughout this process, you'll see me hide and reveal the sound effect as I'm working on the clipping mask. And there's two reasons for that. One, I'm trying to decide which globs of food will look best appearing over the sound effects text. And the other thing is I have to make sure that I'm not cutting out so much of the sound effect that it's hard to read. And a lot of this is just experience. You can kind of make that decision before you've ever even finished your mask. Creating a clipping mask to reveal parts of the art through your sound effect also goes a long way at marrying the lettering to the artwork. It kind of sells the illusion that things are cohesive and they were meant to be that way. Too often lettering can look just like stickers slapped on top of artwork. So any trick you can use to better incorporate the lettering into the art should be used. So now I'm copying balloons. I don't know why I went from doing that one sound effect to doing balloons. Sometimes I confuse even myself. Usually I save all the sound effects till the end, as I mentioned. Drawing tails on the fly. Trying to figure out where I want that tail. And my balloons tend to be slightly organic in shape. Some of them are bigger on the bottom, some of them are bigger on the top, some of them are more like rounded rectangles. So when I copy and paste balloons to different blocks of text, I'm looking for the balloon that will best fit around that block of text. Sometimes we kill ourselves to be too uniform in digital lettering. If you take a look at hand lettering from back in the day, you know, not everything is perfectly aligned, perfectly centered, perfectly uniform. So little bits of non-uniformity go a long way to help sell that the lettering is working hand in hand with the art. So I moved on to these nom-noms, different font. And when I have a sound effect with a lot of the same word, in this case nom, I'm trying to make sure that the letters aren't stacked quite the same way. Some of them have the O's up a little higher, some of them have the M's up a little higher. And here I'm just playing with placements, figuring out what looks good where. I think here I was deciding whether I should do a clipping mask behind that barrel, and I decided not to because this sound effect is coming from a character closer to us, a character in the foreground. So those sound effects would probably appear above the barrel, or in front of the barrel rather. So now I'm going to work on the glug-a-lug drinking sound effects, but I decided to go back and do these little crumbs. Sometimes I do this. It's good if you're doing a sound effect that's supposed to be messy, and since there's already flying food around, I thought I would create these little bits flying around the sound effects. And in deciding on placements for these little bits flying around, again, I'm trying to make sure that the sound effect is legible and readable, that the little bits don't overpower the sound effect. They're just there sort of as spice, you know, it's like adding a little bit of salt. And now on back to the glug-a-lugs. Trying to decide, I thought if we hyphenated it, it might be more readable. And since I have to stack this vertically, those hyphens will help just understanding what's going on as far as, you know, sound effects are words, so they have to be understandable and readable. And here I'm probably already thinking of creating a clipping mask to cut that a lug behind the barrel. We'll see. I've got a little space down there at the bottom that I decided to add one more gug to. But we've got some negative space up there, so I duplicated a G. Try and fill that space a little better. Although I don't like how far I rotated that second G. There we go. Now I'm checking for color. What color is this going to be? I've decided I want to go with a beer color, sort of a golden brown, or a mustard yellow with a brown offset path. Experimenting with gradient fills. That's pretty good. Pops against the blue background. And I've decided to create some droplets, which, you know, might be overkill. There are droplets on the art, and there are globs of food flying around on the sound effect to the left. But I Hate Fairyland, you know, is a little over the top. So why not experiment? I've decided to recreate that offset path. Not sure why. Sampling colors from the artwork with the eyedropper tool. A little too dark. And I've decided to make this a gradient fill as well. A bunch of pink. And now I'm just fine-tuning. And it's time to make another clipping mask. Clipping masks eat up so much of your time that you also want to be careful that you're not making too much of a clipping mask. You're not drawing more than you need to cover something. A little Little flying drops of beer. And there we go. Nope. Looks like I forgot a droplet when I was making the clipping mask. And I'll zoom in, zoom out. And here I'm being very indecisive. Am I happy with this? Is it too much? Experimenting with colors some more here. Do I want to make this a cooler color? Add some blue to that gradient fill. Changing the offset path on this one from black to green. Helps push it further behind the flying globs of food, I think. So I've just added this custom Adobe Illustrator brushstroke to all my balloons. Sort of organic calligraphy nib look. And now I am breaking those panel borders by covering up the edges of the balloons with white rectangles. As I've mentioned before, there's probably a much more technical way to do this, but this is simple and fast and it works just fine. And I think that's it. Taking my last looks, changing the page number in my title block, and as I save the file, we're all done.